We are in First Thessalonians, and I haven't been on here for a couple months. Had personal spiritual warfare, and it's interesting because in First Thessalonians chapter 2, Paul writes, "But we, brethren, having been taken away from you for a short time in presence, but not in heart, endeavored more eagerly to see your face with great desire. We wanted to come to you, even I, Paul, time and again, but Satan hindered us." Sometimes we have to tend to spiritual warfare, and it's not the wrong thing to do, but it's a huge distraction from our faith and walk and work in Christ. So it just reminds us how careful we got to be about who we associate with, the decisions we make, and be very sober-minded and aware. Be surrounded by Christian brothers and sisters who can, keep us straight in life and make sure we don't fall into a mess. But First Thessalonians was one of the first books written around the same time as Galatians, about 50 years after Christ was born, so not long after his death. And Thessalonica is in modern country of Greece, and there's two books, first and second book of Thessalonians. And Paul helped start the church in Thessalonica, and it had been an area of pagan beliefs, so like no particular religion, they just had traditions and different gods maybe that they worshiped, like Roman and Greek gods. And so when the Christian church, so really the power was and faith was all in the government, or the control was all in the government. So when they started having a king in the Christian belief and exalted a king, they got heavily persecuted, especially by the government, and so Paul writes to them and praises them for their faithfulness, and encourages them, or exhorts them to stand steadfast in their faith through this persecution. And he reminds them that he had warned them that this was going to happen when he was there. And, Paul doesn't tell them, okay, make sure you build really thick walls and hide yourselves, gather physical weapons. He doesn't say that at all. He doesn't mention that at all. He says, abound more and more, how you ought to walk and please God. And the will of God, he says, is to abstain sexual immorality. Like, whoa, where did that come from? I was just reading in a devotion this morning about the high percentage of sexual immorality in churches, and how it causes a lot of people that even commit to be pastors and ministers or missionaries to fall kind of away from the church. Sex drives the world, and when we gather together with people, do we love the people, or do we think about other things with these people? And I happen to also have just received an email from a client of mine that I've been counseling about porn addiction, and he's a Christian. And this happens so often, so you would have no idea who I'm talking about. But he sent me an email saying, I'm so happy because when I'm around women now, I look at them as people and not sexual objects, because he's drawn closer to the Lord. And so, it is something that we do need to be reminded of, to stay pure in our thoughts of fellow Christians, and in sanctification and honor of our holiness and our bodies. Then Paul tells them to focus not on the persecution, but on the end goal, which is an everlasting presence with the Lord in eternity. And then he also mentions about that when the Lord returns, that Christians who have passed away will meet him first, they will rise first, and then followed by us who are alive, we will also be caught up together with them in the clouds and meet the Lord in the air. Very interesting. And when will this happen? We don't know. The day and the time will come sudden, catching people off guard.